Ask Reddit. What fan theories have blown your mind with their devastating logic? Part 2. In the beginning of 2001, A Space Odyssey, a black screen is displayed while music plays for a few minutes before the film starts. It's believed that this is the monolith, tilted 90 degrees and taking up the entire screen, as if the entire film is a technological and evolutionary advancement that Kubrick is bestowing us. There are some really ridiculous complex theories about Hal's intentions and about Kubrick's directing. If I remember correctly, the chess game Frank plays against Hal is a very famous one, but Hal makes a wrong move to test Frank's awareness. I will look for the original theory. How Loki really won in the Avengers. One thing to add, Loki isn't acting on his own will. While it is true that he wants to rule Asgard, it is also true that he's under Thanos' control through the Mind Gem. When we first see Loki, his eyes look exactly the same as Hawkeye's when we get a close-up of his face in the invasion of the helicarrier. Loki planned, beforehand, to lose the fight, but he also planned for Hulk to kick the crap out of him, so he'd break the chains around his mind. He has free will back, and Thanos has no idea. Sean Connery's character in The Rock, John Patrick Mason, is actually James Bond. He got caught spying on America and was hidden away in various prisons. This man does not exist, not in the United States or Great Britain, says FBI Director Womack. This ties in with the theory of James Bond being a code name for different agents. If I remember correctly, when the FBI finally lets him out, one of his requests in addition to a hotel suite is a tailored suit, in addition to a shave and a haircut. He's not merely a former soldier and intelligence agent, he has a taste for the finer things, much like Bond. One that hasn't been brought up yet is Blade Runner. Ridley Scott finally closed the debate a few years ago as to whether or not Deckard was actually a replicant. He totally was. But to take this one step further, he was a replicant implanted with the memories of Gaff, Edward James Olmos' character. Gaff was actually the top Blade Runner, but was sidelined due to some injury or illness, hence the cane. And so Deckard was created and implanted with Gaff's memories to continue the search for Roy Batty and friends. This explains why Gaff never really does anything aside from drive Deckard around and why he treats him with such contempt. Gaff's origami also hints at Deckard's true nature, as they seem to demonstrate an insight into what Deckard is feeling. A chicken when he is feeling scared, a stickman with a boner when he is about to meet the smoking hot Rachel, and the unicorn from Deckard's reoccurring dream. It also helps explain the compliment Gaff pays Deckard at the end of the film, after he apparently hovered above the building and watched Batty nearly kill Deckard without intervening. He lands and says, "You've done a man's job," which is the highest praise you could give to a replicant. When it's all laid out like that, I hardly even think it should be considered a theory. It's just clearly what was going on if you take a few minutes to think about it. Ridley Scott did say that, but when he was making the movie, Harrison Ford insisted that Deckard should be human, and Scott agreed with him. At that time, the idea was that it was supposed to be ambiguous, which is something I personally find more appealing than a hard answer either way. I think Ford is still mad about the movie, not just because of the changes and the narration he was forced to do, but because Scott lied to him. From Scott's perspective, it would make sense to lie to Ford. If he was a replicant, he wouldn't know, and Scott would get a better performance that way. The Jetsons and the Flintstones are two portions of the same society. The people living in Bedrock are actually members of a far future, one may say post-human, society that have rejected the day-to-day electronic assistance to live like their long-dead ancestors did, or at least what they think they lived like. History has lost a bit in translation. This explains the talking animals. They're just synthetic creations. It's been so long since any actual animal lived that didn't have human communication bred written into it that the pharaohs didn't realize how silly it is to be talking with creatures that didn't even exist along early humans. Interesting, except the Jetson versus the Flintstones using a time machine. Signs fan theory. Let's skip the M. Night hatred for a moment. I too think he's become something of a joke, but he has made a number of worthwhile movies, and this one I initially couldn't stand, thinking it was full of ridiculous plot holes. And then, Eureka! When I first saw this film, I didn't realize that it wasn't about aliens at all. It's about the return of demons. Notice it's all about a priest's resurgence of belief and a preordained moment of redemption if dared and attempted. There's no alien technology or weaponry or clothing of any kind, only a clawed, naked beast creature and lights in the sky. Furthermore, the running joke throughout the movie is that people see these invaders in a way that's related to their particular frame of mind. The cop sees them as prankster kids, the bookstore owner sees them as a hoax to sell commercials, the Army recruitment office sees them as invading military, the kids see them as UFOs, and the priest sees them as a test of faith. This understanding of the film removed my hatred of the "you've got to be kidding me, they were killed by water" concept. In fact, the priest's daughter had been referred to as holy, as revealed during Mel's key monologue, recognized by all who saw her at her birth as an angel. And her quite particular relationship to water is shown to be very special and spiritual. In other words, she has placed vials of what are essentially holy water all around the house, and the creature's reaction when coming into contact with this blessed liquid is exactly like monsters, vampires being splashed by spiritual acid. This view of the movie also explains the creature's actions. They act like superior tricksters, are not able to break in through closed doors, can be trapped behind simple wooden latches, all mythological elements of demons and vampire-like creatures of lore. It also explains the news over the radio at the end of the movies that an ancient method of killing the creatures has been found in 3 small cities in the Middle East. One would suspect the religious hubs of the 3 main Abrahamic traditions, each discovering the mystic methods of protection and dispatch that I've noted earlier. Note also, all the Christian iconography throughout the movie, the references to signs and wonders, the true meaning of the title, the crucifix shaped hinted at everywhere. Check out the overhead shot looking down on the street driving into town, and the ultimate fact that the entire movie is built around a priest rediscovering he is not abandoned to a random, godless, scientifically oriented universe, but rather is part of a predicted and dreamed of plan. Now, these creatures may for all intents and purposes be some sort of extraterrestrial or interdimensional aliens, but the point of the movie seems to be that they are, in the actuality of the film world, the dark stuff from which all the characters' tales of devils and night creatures were born. Rufus the mole rat from Kim Possible is a phallic symbol. He lives in Ron's pocket and his favorite food is tacos. And all the girls love him. How Garfield is actually dying of starvation and just imagining John and Odie. There was a reference to this in a Halloween-themed comic. Garfield woke up in a condemned and abandoned house. He calls out for Odie and John, but there is no answer. He then wills the illusion back on himself and continues his delusions about his family. A variation of this is Garfield minus Garfield, where every character except for John is removed, and the result is a very disturbing portrait of a chronically depressed, lonely schizophrenic succumbing to his neurosis in suburbia. To all you Potterheads out there, when Sybil Trelawney predicted Harry was born in the midwinter, she was laughed at, as Harry's birthday is in July. However, it is a known fact that, spoiler alert, Voldemort's soul is inside Harry. It's possible that Professor Trelawney was detecting the part of Voldemort inside Harry as Voldemort was born mid-December. Wasn't she predicting Voldemort's death when she thought it was Harry's? Kind of debunked. In Half-Blood Prince, she told Harry he was a wonderful object. From that, we can assume she foretold his death, non-stop, for her own needs, not because she actually thought he was going to die. In the end, both Harry and Voldemort did die, so she was sort of right after all. Maybe McGonagall should raise her salary again. I remember a pretty solid one about how R2-D2 was Luke's father. This was before Empire Strikes Back came out. Luke's father was mortally wounded by Vader. His brain was removed from his body and placed in life support inside a robot. This is why C-3PO is so worried about R2's operational status. C-3 knows that R2 has biological components. Turns out Luke, who got very little Jedi training, isn't all that great. It's his Jedi father inside of R2 every time. Think about that. Early on, when Luke does something with the Force, R2 is always there. Except for the one time on Hoth, and what is R2 doing at that time? Deploying a long-range Force antenna we never see again. It just occurred to me that there was a time when nobody knew that Darth Vader was Luke's father. That must have been mind-blowing. Archer TV show. Whenever someone eats at a Chinese restaurant and brings home a tinfoil swan full of leftovers, they are going to betray the company. Spoil alert, re seasons 1 and 2. Episode 1. When Archer wants to break into the mainframe and alter his financial records. Episode 9. Lana is going to join Odin. And there is another episode where Cyril takes a bribe at the restaurant and his bribe money is in the swan. I'm sure this theory is out there somewhere else, but I've yet to find it. The theory I once heard Richard Feynman mention, that the universe has only one electron. That's a pretty negative view. Actually, it makes the universe a much more positive place than the opposite view.